What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the 12th album by Eminem. Basically, this product is called The Death of Slim Shady, Coup de Grâce. Basically, this project came out in the summer of 2024. So the thing about this particular product is just the fact that I'm going to start, eventually as time goes along, I'm going to start getting into some 2024 projects as far as those pitches going to happen. It may not happen in 2024, but I have some ones planned. Like Marilyn Manson's going to drop an album in 2024. There's some other folks, can't really think of them as full blown. Like Post Malone has one, some folks like that. There's some other ones in there, like some of Future's projects, some of those type ones, like Mixtape Pluto, some of those type pitches. But Eminem was one. Considering that I've reviewed every project by Eminem at this particular stage, it's only natural that I would get to this particular product and just be able to get towards it as far as those pitches going to happen. Now, I was kind of here and there about it. I kind of avoided like the critique of this particular project and just seeing what the overall reception of this product was, just because the fact was that I wanted to see what it was without having like other aspects to kind of question what would be about it. But I do actually think this album is a classic here. I'll go ahead and say it's an interesting impact just because I'd probably have to say out of the albums that Eminem has dropped since about Revival or Southpaw or some of those type projects from about the mid 2010s, this is probably some of his most vicious. And it's an interesting concept because the unfortunate thing is he kills off the Slim Shady character. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say if you're looking for like the lyrics in death type stuff, like folks like the Needle Drop would kind of do some of those type folks. I'm not really going in on like the lyrics here as far as depicting what happens to Slim Shady. I don't really know his full bound. I'd have to say if Slim Shady dies on this particular, if Slim Shady particularly dies on this particular product, I wouldn't know about it just because I listened to this album out of order. I know you're supposed to listen to it in order to see like the concept of the conception of this product, but I was just trying to find out if the music was good and pitches like that. So it's just kind of concept. I've seen some of the critics just about I didn't read the reviews and listen to the stuff as far as those pitches going to happen, but I do want to say I know that at least allmusic.com gave this album like a half star out of five or a 1 star out of five as far as those pitches going to happen. It seems like it's more haphazard. People think it's just another, uh, like not victory lap, but the opposite of victory lap for Eminem, where it's just kind of more coasting that just doesn't seem to do much damage. But I definitely have to disagree with it just because the impact. This takes it back to Eminem in a lot of senses. If you like Eminem from the Slim Shady LP, the Eminem show, even traces of Encore, some of those type pitches. If you remember Eminem from what he did with songs like Without Me and Guilty Conscience, the original one, and even the Marshall Mathers LP days, songs like Kill You, some of those type ones, and Drug Ballads, some of those type pitches. This is Eminem just like where he was in like the early. This is like the closest thing that's going to happen nowadays to Eminem as to where he was back in the early 2000s and late 90s as far as those pitches going to happen. It's very inspired just within the pitch, has traces of some horrorcore in here. It may not be like chopping folks up pitches like that, like it was on Relapse and some of those type ones in Marshall Mathers LP, but it does have the relative pitch that Eminem is pretty manic and schizo on this project. It's a little bit more of like a kind of project that's a little bit more of like a alternate personality type fare where Eminem actually talks to himself, which I didn't realize that was the concept about Slim Shady. Introduces some new themes. I just question it. This feels more like a movie where the hero character kind of argues with himself as far as being an alter ego, and I don't remember if Eminem kind of did that before. I want to say at least on the original song Guilty Conscience, it had Dr. Dre as like the good guy character and Eminem as like the Slim Shady vindictive character. But I look after it on this particular sequel song, Guilty Conscience 2, it's Eminem and it's just Marshall Mathers and Slim Shady as far as those pitches kind of happen. And like I just have to say that Ti pulled off that vibe better on like the Ti versus Tip. I like this album is still going to get a classic score, but just to say within the pitch behind it, it's just kind of a concept that it just there's some things where like Slim Shady this time has a little bit more Paramount type disdain for like folks like Christopher Reeve and pitches like that. It's a little bit more flamboyant with like the gay talk and the more crass and vulgar type talk. It seems to be a little bit more hyphenated compared to how it was back in 1999 and 2000, where he would say those things, but now it just feels a little bit more campy within the approach behind it, where it just feels like I just don't know if Slim Shady was just that generally crass and lewd just within the approach of how he did some of those type of things. I mean, he would say things, he would say, even on Relapse, when he would say Kim Kardashian's butt is big or something like that. Some of the other ones, like on the song Without Me, he says about Slim Shady, it's just a little bit of weed mixed with some hard liquors to like the conception of Slim Shady. It's just kind of the concept. I don't really feel like Slim Shady is as much as full blown like a character as much as it is just Eminem on drugs. Just kind of the concept of just the pitch behind like the necessary aspect to saying that he's just a little bit more less inhibited, I'd have to say, just within the concepts. Not to say, I mean, obviously within the tone behind it, there's some pretty manic stuff that kind of goes along with like, crazy, vicious type albums like Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, but this kind of feels more of like a caricature this time. I just would have to suppose about it. And I didn't really pay as much full bound to the lyrics. This set, like Wikipedia says that this is more of like a conscious type hip hop and satirical type hip hop, but I look after it, I was more paying attention to like the visceral ride of like this particular fair in terms of the lyrics or in terms of the production, the overall aspect of just getting like the thrills of just what Eminem was like back in like the 90s and early 2000s. But I don't want to say the lyrics necessarily spoil it, but it's just kind of the concept. I realized that Eminem, prior to this album, he was not a grandpa. He's a grandpa now. It just is interesting that, Slim Shady was killed off around the same time that he's becoming a grandpa, which is an excellent type pitch. But I look after it, it just kind of felt like Eminem was moving past like the Slim Shady character as if he was getting too old for it just within those relative type pitches. It's kind of disappointing because this is such a vibrostic type album here. I just have to say within the impact of it, this is one of Eminem's best. He's pretty damn inspired here. Slim Shady usually brings out some of the best moments from Eminem just within the pitch. I kind of thought I did at least hear the song Houdini before this album came out, so I do at least remember that song just within the pitch. But I look after it, I noticed in the song Houdini when I heard that song back in the spring that I thought he kind of sounded more flat on the song, just a little bit more winded and just not really wanting to be Slim Shady anymore. It's just kind of within the aspect. I realize if Marshall Mathers is kind of like the straight man in like the scenario, which I'm assuming that he kind of is, just to listen to it full blown, just to kind of say he just doesn't want to be crazy and drug addled anymore and pitches like that and wants to kind of be more upkempt, which is interesting because there's a lot of jabs at like the cancel culture and things like that on this particular product and the woke culture and some of those type of things. I think Eminem is at least like that, like naturally, where Marshall Mathers even doesn't like the woke culture and some of those type of things. But apart from that, it just feels like in terms of this being like a conscious type project as far as just moving past like drug use and just overall more crass and kind of typical kind of vulgar and just overall uncouth kind of antics just with an aspect. But I look after it. It's not so much this project I have a problem with as much as subsequent Eminem albums just to see what's going to happen when Slim Shady's no longer in the picture. I don't know if it's going to be 3 years, 4 years, if he'll be back in 2027, 2028, 2029, just to wonder what's going to happen just within the tone of what's going to happen with Eminem. I'd have to hope. I mean, at least this is an excellent type product. This restores his legacy. This is probably one of the more recent ones. I did enjoy more than I do enjoy Music to Be Murdered by Side B, but I do kind of feel like Kamikaze's forgettable. Revival really had some kind of awkward and kind of just differential type singles. I realized that album Revival is just more of like a blue collar type album. I feel like pop rap recovery was pop rap, but revival is just kind of more work a day for like actually having a blue collar job. Just didn't translate as well with me. And then Music to Be Murdered by Side A just didn't really have good singles on it. So it's just kind of this is his most enjoyable since about Southpaw, or actually since Shady 15. It's just a good concept. But this is a class act here. So go ahead and talk about the singles. There's a lot to get to, and it's going to go through these pretty quickly. So yeah, the lead single Houdini, this should take it way back to what you probably would think best of Eminem when you think of Without Me, Real Slim Shady, My Name Is, some of those type hits, Just Lose It, some of those type ones from like the 2000s, late 90s days. It's like a way throwback Eminem from early 2000s, like I was saying, vintage vibe, but purposely flat candor. I'd have to say about this one, just Eminem sounds really winded on this particular song. It's real lackadaisical, as if he's just done with this particular type sound. Hopefully that's not the case, but it's just kind of the pitch that's just very flat and like its delivery. This is like a circus like spree about this particular song. So yeah, it's just a very this vibrostic type one. If you do remember Eminem from like the Real Slim Shady days, Without Me days, when he was a little bit more frenetic, this pitches like this. It's within that tone. It really tackles more over the concept of this cancel culture and some of those type of things. It's all the sensitivity that kind of goes along. It's typical kind of Eminem type conduct. But I look after it. I feel like even if Eminem does not embrace Slim Shady any further, I think he at least needs like to have the occasional type conduct. I realize that he did have some of that type of stuff. He does have his wisecracks and pitches like that, but this needs to be within the context of continuing to be interesting. It's just kind of the tone behind it. I know I could probably get into this conversation for like the next 12 or 18 minutes, but it's just kind of the concept. As long as the productions are more like this, and there are some trap beats on here, it's kind of the concept is just being able to say, I can see the concept of why this could be a dismantle Eminem album, just because there are some beats on here. I think if this album had more beats like Houdini and Brand New Dance, I definitely would have said it would have been. And so I mean, I'm going to give this album like a 10 out of 10, but just being able to say the concept behind it is just looking after. If it had more beats like 2000s Eminem, I think this probably would have been, like maybe possibly like a more universal kind of success. But I definitely think it did pretty great job for what it did, to being able to say it. But the second single is Toby. I do not recommend this song. This is kind of the concept. This has Big Sean and another cat on here. Maybe Tron and Big Sean as far as those picks kind of happen. Just didn't really appreciate this one. It was just a little bit more of a spicy type song that just kind of felt unnecessary and just kind of awkward just within the connotation and delivery of how it kind of went. Just didn't really appreciate the aspect of what it was trying to deliver upon. Just didn't really have much direction. It was just kind of the concept of just not really being that effectual. I just feel like the execution of this song was one of the poor ones in recent memory from Eminem. Probably about as bad as like the Walk on Water song with Beyonce as far as those pitches kind of happened. And that wasn't Beyonce's fault, but it was just kind of the beat delivery. But it's just kind of concept, just the real kind of skittery kind of piano beat on Toby was just not very affable type one. Just didn't really feel like a good song to kind of hear in concert. Just something that would be like a real crowd pleaser. Just didn't really have the tone behind it. Just not very much effectualness to kind of get there. Somebody Save Me with Jelly Roll is the third single. Now, I do appreciate this song. I do recommend this song. It's a pretty nice one. It's like a further kind of homely Eminem that shows pain and Grâce, just as far as that particular kind of goes. He does have some personal songs on here. Temporary with Skylar Gray's another one. But basically, this is a song that has like a grim kind of pseudo recovery era type vibes about it, just in particular as far as that kind of goes. This has a nice hook from Jelly Roll, I'd have to say. So it's typical kind of personable Eminem. It's a good concept that he can do these sorts of songs within the tone of kind of taking it back to Marshall Mathers LP and Recovery, some of those type ones where he was just more personal, just within the tone behind it. So it's just more, if you like the Marshall Mathers LP Eminem, if you like the Recovery Eminem, if you like some of like the Marshall Mathers LP 2 Eminem, it's just that same sort of pitch just within the vibe behind it. It's kind of late, this more homely type production on there with like a Jelly Roll hook, and that's what you got. Pretty pop rapish, and it works for what it is. So yeah, that's the concept behind it. So basically, Pitchfork gave this album a 4.8 out of 10. Rolling Stone gave it a 2 out of 5. Sputnik Music gave it a 3.7 out of 5. Some folks like that. I just look after it. I really feel like the concept behind this project is just the strengths behind it is just returning to like throwback Eminem. I mean, I feel like if you were someone that always had problems with Eminem, then it's not going to really win new folks over. That's kind of the pitch. Like, I feel like for some folks, there are some folks that feel like Marshall Mathers LP is his best album, period. Probably think that Eminem Show is good, but not a classic. Encore is like a mediocre album. Relapse is kind of relatively here and there. I just look after it. I mean, just when paying attention to the critics, I realize that there's a lot of critics that are not going to give Eminem's early albums when he was in his prime like 5 stars to begin with, which is kind of the concept. If you don't like those albums, you're probably not going to like this one. It's just the pitch behind it. So in my opinion, Slim Shady LP is a classic. Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem Show, Encore is pretty damn good. Curtain Call is a classic. Relapse is a classic. Recovery is pretty damn close to a classic just within the pitch. But I mean, most of these Eminem albums that he did, Slim Shady EP is a classic. Between 97 to about 2013, I'd definitely say that Hell the Sequel is definitely pretty damn good. It needed more promotion and singles, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, Eminem between like the late 90s to early 2010s is pretty pitched within it. I just look after it, but just being able to say this is a return to form. So basically, out of 19 songs, I'm reviewing the Mourners edition that has the 3 extra songs in there, and I look after it, just being able to say out of 19 songs, I wound up recommending 14. So really, the only 5 songs I don't recommend would just be Habits, Head Honcho, Toby, and the Fuel Shady edition, and Kyrie and Luca. So just to talk about these, most of the songs I don't recommend are the ones that have some guest rappers on here. I just feel like the problem with Eminem on this particular product is just the fact that these guest rappers on here are doing more trap-centric type stuff, and it just doesn't fit the theme of what Eminem's doing. The thing about Eminem is he kind of supersedes like the concept of needing to submit to like a popular kind of subgenre, because that's just always how he's been. On the Eminem Show and Marshall Mathers LP days, he wasn't doing like the shiny suit era. He wasn't doing like swag rap and like ringtone rap in like the mid late 2000s. He wasn't doing like the R&B type pop rap that Drake and folks like that and Drake and The Weeknd were doing. He just never really went in with those sorts of trends as far as those pitches kind of happened. I'm trying to think of like Eminem show type stuff. He wasn't doing Southern hip hop in 2002, 2004 and stuff. So it's just kind of the concept that I just feel like when Eminem tries to meld with trap music, it just doesn't work. I just look after it like the Kyrie and Lucas song with 2 Chainz. This one's not a trap song, but just really had one of the worst produced beats on here. I'd had to say it was just kind of a concept of a more homely type one that just really felt flat and just kind of this sprawling, but just not in a good way. Just didn't really nail it as well. It's kind of a disappointing collaboration with 2 Chainz because it probably should have went better. Fuel, the Shady edition, just didn't really change that much from Fuel. Fuel, the original, is a very excellent song, but the Shady edition just didn't enhance much. I already talked about not recommending Toby. It's just kind of one that's just not very affable. Probably another one of the poorest beats on here as far as the pitch, and just the overall direction of that song was not that good. I was expecting more because I thought because Toby and the aspect of Toby Maguire, but it was just kind of a middle fingers up, just kind of more siding with adversity more so than bucking it just within the tone behind it. Just didn't really like the direction of that one. Head Honcho is just kind of a trap type production on here that didn't work that well. It's kind of a disappointing layout for Easy Mill, which I think is one of his Shady Records artists. And then like it's the same thing with Habits. This is just a trap type one that was probably some of the I believe that was the sort of problems that folks had with the revival as far as those pitches can happen to some of those turn up type ones that kind of remind it just felt like a standard complaint. Just felt like a standard complaint that folks kind of had with Revival. But every other song on here I recommend. So yeah, the score I'm going to give this album. This album gets a 10 out of 10. The Mourners edition with the 3 extra songs, I don't really recommend that many. The problem with it is only 1 out of the 3 songs on there is worth really purchasing the extra Mourners edition for. So if you're going to pay like, you know, $23 for the Mourners edition or pay 17 for like the standard edition, I would just say just to download the only song I recommend on here, Like My Shit, digitally, because it's just not worth the extra prices for 3 new songs, but most of them are just not that much more bountiful. But the Mourners edition, I'm going to give an 8.25 out of 10, but the standard edition with just the 16 songs out of 20 on here, I would say that's going to get a 10 out of 10. And 16 out of 20 is just there's 4 skits that narrows it down to 16 songs. And out of those 16 songs, I wound up recommending 13. So that would be a 10 out of 10. So I just look after it. But I'm just going to go in on some of these. So Brand New Dance is like a warped and slogged out kind of good pairing with Houdini. I would definitely feel like this is like an encore era Slim Shady. I would definitely have to say here. And this is like a dark dance kind of sludge, I'd have to suppose, just within the pitch. So this is ripped out of the encore era. This is ripped out of the encore era. Just really, I think Eminem just held on to his vocals that he did back in 2004, which is a pretty excellent type pitch. I can tell just by the tone and the cadence of it that it was from 2004, 2005, some pitches like that. It's real excellent type one. Really like the kind of slogged out production on this particular one. Just a good cousin of like Houdini and some pitches like that. Probably one of the best songs on here in terms of like retro Eminem. But I do like some of this new era Eminem. This is good stuff. Guilty Conscious 2 is a quality one. It's like a nice sequel that doesn't tarnish the original. I'd have to say it has a skittering kind of schizo. Is like a skittering kind of schizo too, and I'd have to say about this one, this is just some manic turn up. So this is a good sequel within a sense, but it just kind of changes the narrative a little bit as far as like Eminem kind of contemplating things with Slim Shady as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just gives it a differential type tone, which I didn't realize Eminem kind of bickered with Slim Shady like that, but it's just kind of the concept just about it that I look after. It's still a good song just in the pitch, the torment of just what's going along with it, but it's a little, I would probably feel like it's just a little bit more modernized of just like, you know, Marshall Mathers is the straight arrow, the one that wants to do the right thing, and you know, Slim Shady's the one that wants you to live it up a little bit and drink the Kool-Aid, some pitches like that, I'd had to say. I like this song, but I would say that I just feel like the atmosphere behind it was just a little bit more, had a little bit more juice towards it when Dr. Dre was the good guy and Slim Shady, which was Eminem, was like the bad character. I just feel like with there not being that sort of narrative, or it just makes Marshall Mathers a little bit more boring, considering that he's always the one that doesn't want to do the fun stuff. You know, it's just kind of the pitch, but still, it's a good song. Temporary with Skylar Grey's a quality one. It's like a vintage kind of personable Eminem, like When I'm Gone from Curtain Call and Mockingbird from Encore, some of those type pitches of Eminem. It's good that Eminem hasn't lost touch with like his brooding type songs and more kind of ruminating, sociable or homely bound type ones. So he does have a rekindled kind of spark for paying attention to Haley and just kind of the aspect of being there and not missing out on her development as far as pitches like that kind of happen just within the tone as far as those aspects kind of happen. It's a good pitch. It's a good continuation of some of that. It's just an aspect behind how some of these kind of turn out. It's good type tone, kind of get some of these. I'm glad that Eminem is as interesting as he was back in 1999 and 2003 with some of those type pitches as far as that kind of goes. Road Rage is a quality one as well. It's like an in-between kind of Slim Shady LP throwback, I'd have to say. Feels like some slogged kind of elevator music, I'd have to say. And it's like a drug, this is definitely like some drugged out kind of slum type music to get just ghetto and slumish just within the tone behind it. Just feels like Eminem back at the trailer park, just hella strung out on pills or something like that, just within the pitch behind it. I like a retro throwbacks like 97 or 1999, 1998, some of those type pitches. Real nice one to kind of get here. Antichrist is another one that's a pretty good throwback in a sense. It's like a throwback to Slim Shady LP, specifically like the song As the World Turns. I'd have to say a good concept for that. Just really that floaty kind of appeal about it, this in-between type day. The song has like an overcast kind of typical day type fare about it, and this is like some local outings just like in 1999 type fare. Just something, songs like I'm Shady, when As the World Turns, some of those type ones. This, Eminem flirting with chicks at the laundromat, buy him slices of pizza, some of those type tones just within the pitch behind it. I like some of that lackadaisical type fare. It's a good concept to be able to get some of those. So I have to say, Renaissance is a nice one. It's like a morose kind of horror-like album kickoff. I would definitely like pretty good throwback to early era Eminem. I'd have to say also just like Marshall Mathers LP and even Relapse, some of those type ones. And it's like a great 2020s kind of grim snack run of a song to kind of get here. It's a real nice one. Another one that's pretty horror in tone. So this album does have traces of Relapse in here. I'd say songs like Evil, songs like Renaissance, songs like Lucifer in some senses. Some of these type ones do have some of that horror type tone just to be able to get. Just really like the appeal behind it. But yeah, Evil is like a morose and morbid kind of Eminem, I'd feel like here. The song has some surprising horror flavor that's back to like the Marshall Mathers LP and Relapse days. I definitely have to say about this. And it's like some vintage kind of shady kind of get here. So I do appreciate some of this. Has pretty good hook from Eminem on here, just with the pitch behind it. It's a real nice haunting type fare. I do like the aspect. That's one thing about Slim Shady, is just the fact that you get that hauntingness. Songs like Kill You, songs like Kim, some of those type pitches, songs like 3 a.m., some of those type ones, just standard vintage type throwback just within the pitch behind it. Songs like Stan even, I'd have to say. A surprising trap song that works pretty heavily off this particular project. This is one of the few ones that has a guest on here that I do full-blown appreciate just within the boundlessness of it, or within the execution of it as Fuel. It's like a haunting kind of horror tone trap flame of a song to kind of get here. Very brooding and passively vicious kind of nightcomers to kind of get. This is like a great song to get snacks and smoke to. Yeah, this one just has like a brooding kind of piano beat as far as those pitches kind of happen. This real nice one. This is the way that the album by Dr. Dre, like his 2022 EP, probably should have sounded like. This is the sort of stuff. I mean, it's just a better produced type one. I mean, some of these type thumb type ones trying to get some of that vehicle knock, like songs like Habits kind of did, and the one with Easy Mill kind of did, or yeah, the one with Easy Mill kind of did. I feel like this is a little bit more haunting just within the sense behind it. I feel like Fuel definitely had some ghastliness about it that just feels more like Eminem compared to some moments where he just hasn't in recent years, I'd have to say. Good concept for that. This is a good aspect because, yeah, definitely a strength of Eminem is when he broods and kind of ruminates about some of this. This feels like more of like a passively kind of haunting type one where he'd be pissed off. A-La songs uh, like Way I Am and some of those type tones, just some of those type ones just be able to get. Just kind of works for like recent times of being able to be able to do songs in 2020s like he did in like 2000, some of those type pitches, some of those type fares. Kim and Way I Am, some of those type songs. So good pitch for that. Road Rage is a pretty nice one. It's like an in-between kind of Slim Shady. Bad one is like a courtyard and front yard kind of autumn evening frolic, I would have to say about this one. It's like some cagey kind of buzz noise, I'd have to say. Typical conduct for like homies type music, I'd have to say. Good concept. It's a good aspect behind this one. It's just kind of a little bit more crazier and just overall off the chain type Eminem, a little bit more dismantled. I'd have to say it's good pitch. This is why Slim Shady needs to be around. It's for songs like this, just being able to do some of these type ones. I mean, this is like a recent kind of crazy Eminem type song. Just the concept of getting Eminem, but just where he's kind of more of like a loose cannon, where he's just don't give a fuck like he was back in 97 and 99. Some of those type pitches. It just is not a very reliable type beat in terms of like trustworthiness, and it's just not so much like that's something that you want to stand behind. It's just kind of constant in terms of the production type fare. It just feels like a more Jerry type Eminem that's real. That's a good embrace to be able to get for like the character that Slim Shady's supposed to depict. So it's a good concept for that. The skit slash song Trouble's a pretty nice one. It's like a Jerry and kind of schizo trip out type song kind of get here. It's like a glaring kind of hella torch, and by that I mean high as hell tune to kind of get within that aspect. It's a brief in between for like it's like a brief kind of in between for like an intermission, and just check your phones and pitches like that. Good concept. It's only about 50 seconds, but it's an excellent type pitch. I think the only other song I haven't talked about on here is Lucifer. It's like a jaunting and kind of darkly jovial kind of mess hall music on Get Here. It's like a relative frivolity about this particular one. It's like some social horrorcore and like an evening spark that this song particularly kind of has. So I wanna emphasize the concept of it being like social horrorcore just within the tone. It's not so much like it's kind of brooding and like your cabin type music pitches like that. It's more in like den type music and more kind of insular and isolated. I feel like this is definitely one for having some relative kind of jive about it. Kind of like Relapse, if it were less isolated, I'd have to say just within the pitch behind this kind of one where it has a little bit of social jive about it. I do like some of these social embrace type tunes because I know Eminem probably realizes at this stage that he has some complaints that he just does not step out and kind of be amongst like crowds and more things like that in often enough fashion. So some good concepts of songs like Bad One and Lucifer kind of have some of that relative tone about it. And I'd also say Like My Shit's another nice one for that. So this is a relatively social kind of Eminem project. I mean, he still broods on here. He has some ruminating songs, but it's just not as full bound. There's some moments like I even feel like Guilty Conscious 2 feels like an Eminem that's at least not at the house pitch, just like that, where he's just kind of amongst, just kind of having some of those type moments of just kind of back and forth, but still a concept of some relative social spark about it. Some good type tones. There are some social gems on here. Lucifer is one of those. And then the deluxe edition song Like My Shit's a pretty quality one as well. It's like a rickety kind of get hella tore up trap glaze kind of Get Here. It's like definitely some pounding kind of nightclub flash. I'd say about this one, it's like a social and venue kind of venom. Like it's like a social and venue kind of venom to kind of Get Here. So this one just really feels like you're high as hell as far as those pictures will kind of happen with it. So it's a great type concept kind of Get Here. It's real at this bona fide type hit, just stock Eminem, I'd have to say. So yeah, I enjoy this album. It's a great pitch behind this being able to say this album gets a 10 out of 10. The social score is kind of tricky. I think I'm going to give the social score. I'll go ahead and give the social score like a 9.5 out of 10. I want to give it a 10 out of 10, but I just look after like the tone behind it. I don't know. That's actually kind of a question mark whether or not I should give the social score like whether or not I should give the social score like a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. Because I look after it. I mean, this is actually an uppage in like normal Eminem type content. This is about as social as he's been since probably like the Encore Eminem show type days, I'd have to say, just within the pitch behind it. It felt like he was kind of wrestling with his demons on like Recovery and Marshall Mathers LP 2, I'd have to say. And then the concepts of like kind of albums like Slim Shady, or then the concepts like Shady 15 and Southpaw were just kind of more Recovery leftovers and pitches like that. And then I'd have to say that Revival was like Blue Collar Embrace, and then I think it was just kind of darker demons on Common Cause or some of those type ones. But I look after it, this is actually this really, I feel like this Slim Shady revamp of just getting Slim Shady after lengthy amounts of time that he hasn't been around as much, just really has some good aspects of just being able to have like that social kind of jive, getting Eminem to do some things just within the aspect behind it. I mean, once again, if you're paying attention more full bound to the lyrics, there may be some conduct to like the satire on there and just the concepts of like trying to be more straight edge and just do the right thing and just kind of kick bad habits, some of those type tones. But I really think, drowning that out or taking like what Eminem says with like great, or taking in the concept of some of this in stride and just be able to say that Eminem just has, I really don't feel like Eminem is really trying to be a stick in the mud on this particular product. I don't know full bound because I didn't listen to it. I don't know full bound because I didn't, in depthly kind of give it like the full blown kind of just 5, 8, 10 hour listen, but I just look after the tone behind it. That definitely the product of this album is fun, and it's definitely a lot more social jive than a lot of things that's happened in Eminem recent times. I mean, he has songs for like social jive pitches like that. Slim Shady's pretty compelling character, even all these years later, just has an excellent type pitch for that. Some brilliant type concepts and great productions on here for the most part. And this is just an overall thrilling project that just has a lot of appeal. It just is uncommon for like recent times from the 2020s. I'm not just saying that from Eminem, but just music in general has been kind of somewhat devout. Our music in general has just been kind of somewhat slight in these times. It has seemingly been like, I'm very glad that Eminem just did not take the health-bound type trip and just kind of make more just kind of drink water, go to the gym, be healthy, kick your bad habits type tone that so many things have kind of been just circa these particular times. I'm very glad this is a breath of fresh air in those particular times, because I was almost thinking I was going to give this album like a poor score just within the tone behind it. I thought this is really going to be kind of like You know, this kind of like a nagging type album that was just going to say, Slim Shady, I'm done with him, trying to throw him away and just throw away the key along with it, to say that those times are done. I just don't want anything to do with like bad habits and those sorts of things. But look, I'm glad that this wasn't like that. It's an excellent type concept. So 10, I'll go ahead and give the social score a 10 out of 10 just within the pitch, just because it nails it. Just has so many hit songs on here. In terms of the future, like this is Eminem's most recent project. So this came out in the summer of 2024. The deluxe edition came out in the fall of 2024. So it's an excellent type pitch. But yeah, this is basically like a new era classic. I'd say I would definitely consider the concept. Just look after the strengths that Eminem has and realize that he capitalized on these. Despite the fact that, I mean, there's really not even any despite the facts. I just would say the concept of his Eminem covers a lot of bases on here. He's more social. He does some great songs on here. It just has the aspect of really having some feralness. Some Shady still as throwing as he was in 1999. It's just an excellent type pitch to get these return to strengths and just have some content for like some social kind of sneeriness and like a horror and just overall kind of dark carnival type aspect to really have like for some schizo kind of head trips.